The Tao of Self-Confidence, Episode 929. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. Visit our website at thetaoofselfconfidence.com. Your inner journey to self-confidence awaits. If you're tired of being the best-kept secret in your industry, listen up. You don't need to be louder, you need to be seen. Grab my free Visible Framework Toolkit, the exact steps I use to go from overlooked to being the go-to expert people turn to for impact and insight. Download it now at thetaoofselfconfidence.com. Well, hello friend. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. I'm your host today, Sheena Yap Chan, and today I have an amazing lady on the show today. I actually met her when I spoke at TEDx in December, and she's one of the most amazing women I've ever met, so I definitely had to have her on the show. She is the founder and CEO of Karviva Wellness Beverages, and I'm just super excited to have her on to share her story today. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Angela Zeng. Angela, how are you today? Maybe you can fill in a little bit more about yourself to the listeners.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Sheena. I mean, you impress me just as much. I guess you feel like how much you impressed by my resume or profile. But, I always admire people who can write so well because I always feel myself not as a good writer. Well, thanks to AI, I feel like I can have my writing all added and corrected by the AI. But anyway, I come from a family with deep roots in traditional Chinese medicine, several generations, all kind of in that traditional medicine field, helping people to feel better. But myself actually ventured out to study biochemistry when I was in undergraduate and then came to the US, almost 30 years ago to pursue my PhD education in pathology. And since then, I did many years of medical research. I was a research postdoc fellow at Northwestern Medical Center, concentrating on understanding cancer, cell and molecular biology level. Then you're going to ask me what I'm doing here, right? Karviva Wellness Beverage. How does that related to either traditional Eastern medicine or cell and molecular medical research? I have to say, it's truly it's a brand or my passion, my project beyond just to help people to understand this ancient healing knowledge, as well as the wisdom, as well as understand nutrition and wellness, backed by science, from a scientist lens. For me is really, I would say, I started work on that about 8 years ago when my friends urged me, oh gosh, you have so many amazing remedies. They work so well. You need to find ways to market them so other people can benefit from it. So I thought about, gosh, I come from research field and I have years, business development experience, but I had nothing to do with consumer product. So related to your wonderful podcast topic, I was like, lack of self-confidence. How I'm going to pull out a brand like this? But I think is really that urge to serve my community. And also the most important thing is I just feel like someone like me who has so much knowledge has the responsibility to educate people who may not even heard of what is TCM or, traditional Eastern healing wisdom, might just want to have something physical they can touch and then got them curious, then they can start to understand this amazing holistic lifestyle.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And it's not always easy to go out there and start something, right? And I love that you went for it. And I know Carviva is doing so well. And so I'm just grateful for Asian women like you just putting yourself out there and just making a name for yourself, especially in North America. It's not always easy. We're always taught the American dream is to go to school, get a job, and work till retire. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but there's so many other ways of doing it. And here's another way that you're showing us. And Angela, what's your favorite self-confidence quote?
Yeah, well, this is a quote I got from someone somewhere. not from like the most famous person we all know, but here's the quote: courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else is more important. So for me, that makes lots of sense. For example, when I first started work on Karviva brand, obviously I was viewed and treated as an outsider, not just because my race, my skin color, or my gender, not fit into the typical traditional grocery product market. I think it's because people feel like, someone come from medical research, how she's going to understand how to sell a product, right? These two things has no connection with each other. So obviously there are tons of fear. But instead of finding ways to get rid of those fears, let's say, getting, oh yeah, maybe hearing someone to say, yeah, your medical background is going to be wonderful, kind of hearing that kind of confirmation from other around me, I think is really understand the goal, the mission, or the vision behind this brand, behind this project. Is the decision, for example, I want to serve as a conduit of average people with Mother Nature, right? So the traditional Eastern healing philosophy is all about understanding your own body and then how you connect with other people around, other creature around, and most importantly with Mother Nature. And of course, it's urge of, I want to do something right for my community, given health is a big issue now due to the food we're eating. And then, of course, my family, I want to set a good example for my children. So that's why I think is once you make that decision that something else is more important, then you have the true driving force to overcome those fears.
I love that quote, and it's so true. Courage isn't about not having fears, it's having it and doing it anyway. And when you have a big purpose like what you do, then you're more willing to do that, right? I talk to a lot of women who they say when they're like, "How do you take action? I keep holding myself back." And it comes to like the theme of our TEDx talk, right? Purpose. What is your purpose? And when you have a strong purpose, you're more than willing to do it. So I love that quote. And in your own words, how do you define self-confidence?
Well, to me, self-confidence is really knowing what you're doing. That means you have to have the right knowledge and the skill sets. Obviously, those don't come overnight. It takes time and patience to accumulate those. And so once for me, it's like in many occasions, circumstances there, I have to face uncertainty, which is a typical thing for any entrepreneur. Uncertainty is a given once you decide to start your own business. So, but I think that self-confidence can only be built upon you have that deep knowledge and two reservoirs you can pull from when that uncertainty is so big and you can't get a clear answer. I mean, seeking clarity is a constant struggle for, I think, even for large business owners now these days, but especially for a small business owner. So for me, it is really built upon something that's both tangible and you cannot touch. Is not about build upon your appearance. I think especially for women, right? It's not about like we see lots of influencers or celebrities, of course, or just now these days creators on social media. And people I think pay too much attention about, oh, you need to look perfect in front of the camera on that video. I think it's not about that because your audience would really judge you based on whether you're providing value to them. And that value can only come from years of learning and practicing.
Thanks for sharing that. It's important to practice what you're good at, right? It doesn't happen overnight, like you mentioned. Like even doing the TEDx talk, like it took a lot of preparation just to do a short speech, right? The memorization, the pacing, the movements. I mean, the morning of, I was trying to practice in my heels, trying to walk, pretending there was a red dot. I mean, it took a lot to give the best speech out there, and like entertainers, they perform so much to the point that they do so well because they do so much practicing. So I love that you mentioned that.
You're absolutely right. I think that part is, I think the common statistic I've heard is in order to become the expert in any field, you need to have at least 10,000 hours of work on that particular topic. I think that data come from how they train the pilot. If you want someone fly that flight without feeling anxious, then they were saying that person, ideally, the pilot should have 10,000 hours training behind his bell or her bell. So, yeah, exactly right. I mean, that TEDx talk for me, because I always joke about I have pretty thick skin because I have to constantly talking in front of cameras, for social media and content creation, but also for events, sampling, all those things, it's still very different because standing on a big stage in front of crowd and it is more than 10 minutes, it's about 10 minutes talk, which requires not just memorization, but also requires you master at least the basic skills of public speaking. And so that just comes from practice. So I think for anyone out there, right? The good news is you don't need to have a PhD degree or whatever degree to gain a self-confidence. You don't need to be even like a local celebrity to gain that self-confidence or leader in your community to gain that self-confidence. You can spend the time and effort to learn, become the expert of any subject that you enjoy, and you can build your confidence on that.
Thanks for sharing that. And Angela, what was your life like before your discovery of self-confidence?
Well, I think like many of us who has too many educations behind us, right? Especially for Asians, not, and for women, we like to chase that kind of external validation. So that could be a degree, that could be publications, that could be your title when you're working a business organization or whatsoever. It really come to me after, I would say a few years later after I start my business. I mean, at the beginning, I was still chasing those things. I worked in large corporation, pharmaceutical company for quite a number of years, and that's how people rank you, judge you. However, when I started my own business, I feel like, gosh, I really had to start everything from scratch. Whatever the title, the rank I had means nothing now. So it's all about being humble and learn from everyone around you. I would say that's kind of, before I was just like a typical scientist or a businesswoman, constantly worry about, well, how people judge me. And now I don't think about that anymore, crazy enough.
Thanks for sharing that. In Asian culture, that's what we're taught too, right? Like the judgment can take a toll on us. And when we can learn to let go of that, it's so freeing, especially when it's like seeking approval from your parents. Like that is a huge one. And when I learned to let go of that, it was just like I felt so light after. But what was that point in your life when you realize, you can go out there, create this amazing business, being able to, spread the word about Eastern medicine and health and wellness through your drinks? What was that aha moment that made you take the leap into entrepreneurship?
That's such a great question, and I hope my answer will inspire many, many others out there. To be honest with you, the first couple of years after I started Karviva, I was still the Angela, that kind of using external validations as the source of my self-confidence. I would say is really the moment, and I talk about it in my TEDx talk, is that family mental health crisis kind of, with my son that really remind me healing requires patience and presence. It was not about my title anymore, right? Yeah, so I would say it's not about whether I can try to please everyone. Back then, when I first started Karviva, is I want to please every customer. And I realized that's impossible. And I want to chase that fast growth. Everyone's talking about that hockey stick, fast growth curve. And then I started to realize I need to be humble. And then I need to really focus on serving my community, and I need to really come out of the fear of honoring my own culture, which is the traditional Chinese medicine or traditional Eastern healing wisdom. Because to be honest with you, at the beginning, the first couple of years, I was afraid. I didn't even want to mention that. I'll just say ancient healing wisdom because I was afraid that this doesn't fit into the mainstream culture, right? We for most immigrants, we come from different culture, and we know even now these days, people are getting more open-minded. Still, there are lots of judgments and suspicions on a culture they are not, familiar with, they didn't grow up with. So that actually, I think, crisis really allows me to kind of just say, hey, this is what I truly believe. It helped me, and I'm going to let everyone else know. And I'm like, I'm not here to please everyone. I always say now these days, if you don't like my content, you can always move to the next one. Nobody force you to listen to me, right? Or listen to my pitch. But again, for those who resonate, they will find it valuable.
Thanks for sharing that. And I'm glad, you were able to heal through that crisis. Especially mental health is not something we talk about in Asian culture. It's still seen as a taboo. I have family members who still think it's not real. And so I'm really glad you were able to heal through that, work through that, and realize that, this is something that changed my life. And if it can change mine, why can't it change others? And you've been able to do that through your business. And because of that, what's your life been like now?
Well, I would say on the business side, again, I still face all the challenges like many, pretty much every other entrepreneur, small business owner faces. We share the common upscales and the difficulties now these days we all have. But on the other side, I would say in terms of as a leader of my business or as an active member of my community, I what I learned in the past few years really helped me is really focusing on serving the true purpose of, why I started Karviva, and then is, look beyond the fear that I had, how people would judge me by my business, judge me by how much success I had, or judge me by, by branding, all those things. Now, I would say I feel like in certain way I have more freedom in my heart. On the other way, maybe my skin just grow much thicker, so I can shut off those negative comments or whatever, or look at the criticism positively, right? If it is a criticism that I can benefit from, that I learn from it, I make improvements. If it is not a fair criticism, then just ignore that. I think that's something that's a rule I'm operating under right now. And then in terms of leading people, is really focusing on the growth. How can I help my staff to grow? Right? I always tell them, even if you leave this company, I hope the experience, the learning you accumulate here is going to make your next job so much easier and so much better. I think that's what I've been focusing on. Yeah. And going back to what you just mentioned about, people who come from the Asian culture, we like to please our parents. Remember the days when we were in school, we're so worried about getting B's or C's, right? I mean, gosh, and we want to do perfectly on tests, try to be a perfect kid, and then and the mental wellness side, not just, I think most children don't feel comfortable to raise that to their parents. And I think for parents, especially for Asian parents, it almost feels like a shame, right? If your kid has some mental health issue, because it's almost like that reflect badly on myself as a mom or as a dad. I seems like I did something wrong. I didn't raise my children right. Right, because most people would feel like, it's just a sign of weakness, or it's just, you're not focusing on the right thing. They should just focus on study and then, doing all the good things and eventually get into Ivy League school or whatever, right? But I think what I learned through my real life experience is life is not like that.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And Angela, if our listeners were tuning into your episode and they're in a similar journey to self-confidence, what'd be that one tip you would give to them?
I think for anyone out there, let's say if you, I think we all go through that. Some days, especially midlife, you sit there and you because now these days there's so many ways to compare your life with other people's life. You compare them, especially on what you heard, what you have seen on social media, and they just feel like, how come they look so good? How come they can afford such a luxury vacation? How come their kids are doing so good? And I feel like I'm a failure here, right? And I'm not that young. I don't know what I can do to get back on track or whatever. I think is what you have to do is first is collect some small wins. The small wins you can even write them down on your daily journal or whatever piece of paper that you can dig out maybe a week later, a month later to say, hey, I did this. That small win doesn't have to be, oh, I got a promotion, I got a raise. It can be just, I did this and it makes me feel really good, right? I made a change of my diet, or I started to work out a little bit more. I started to read to my kids more, or I started to spend more time with my kids, or whatever. That makes you feel good. That's a win. And then the second thing is when you feel alone, you need to learn, I call it borrow courage. That means join the group that you can find the right person that can mentor you, that can push you to the next level. I think that's so important because I think the real data is most women are not so good with socializing. We're good with socializing with other moms, but we are not so good in terms of socializing to get to the next job opportunity or business opportunity. And the other thing you can try is do one thing, just one brave thing each day when you try to build that self-confidence. Because something like you feel like is not the typical me would feel comfortable to do. It can be speaking in a public environment, can be say no to some tasks, can be set a boundary to your colleague or whatever, to your business manager. But I think that confidence just will compounds over time. And then I will say the other thing is be proud of who you are. Doesn't matter. You come from a different culture, different background. Sometimes we always like to be follow the leaders in this culture. You don't want to feel like I don't want to be judged. I don't want to feel like I'm an outlier. But you need to have that habits. Honor your own culture background or honor who you are. You're different. That makes you wonderful. And then lastly, because I come from a health and wellness field, I would say so importantly is listen to your body, have compassion to your own health. We all operate under high pressure, I would say job or endless tasks, both as a Korean woman. Yeah, professionals or mom, full-time mom. I would say spend time to take care of yourself, have adequate sleep. Don't forget to hydrate and try your best to eat healthy. Yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you so much for all those tips. And if our listeners want to get to know you and check out Karviva, is there any links or social media profiles we can connect with?
You can follow us on social media. Our handle is Karviva Wellness. Spelling is Karviva Wellness. And then you can visit our website, karviva.com. I highly encourage you to sign up our newsletter. We don't do the salesy newsletter. We actually do lots of contents on holistic health, tips, recipes. We run a giveaway from time to time, special promotions. So get curious, check out our website.
Thanks so much for sharing that. And our listeners, if you want to connect with Angela, you can also head on over to the taoselfconfidence.com and search for Angela's name. Her show notes will pop up along with everything else that we talked about. And I just want to thank Angela for taking the time to share her story and wisdom with us. So thank you so much, Angela.
Thank you so much, Shayna, yeah, for this wonderful opportunity to share what is about self-confidence and how to gain it.
Not a problem. It was an honor having you on the show. And to our listeners, be on the lookout for another new episode of another amazing woman's journey to self-confidence, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now. You can now purchase Bridging the Confidence Gap: How Empowered Women Change the World on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, Indigo, and other book retailers sold worldwide. Get your copy today. Thank you for tuning in to another amazing episode of the Tao of Self-Confidence. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to get your daily boost of confidence.